I've considered exploring other religions or leaving the church.
Well, I have left the church because I grew up in it. It wasn't for me. Especially once I became a high schooler, started hanging out with different crowds of people and seeing how different people live, expanding your bubble. And I had my first friend that identified as being LGBTQ, and my parents did not like that. Didn't want me hanging around this person, and it was strictly because they believed that because they were homosexual, they were going to lead me into a life of sin, and that person's going to die and go to hell and be punished just because of their lifestyle. And then I was already questioning, even when I was a little kid, things about the church. And because of that one fact, I was like, I can't keep doing this. I need to be somewhere where people feel accepted, because if it's something with homosexuality, then I can go to another church. It could be something with my blackness or being a woman or something else. There's always going to be some dividing factor. I also went through a lot of trauma. I had lost 3 people that I loved all in a row. And the question kept coming up of, what does happen to us after we die? I don't just think that it's a heaven and a hell. There has to be something more than this. Yeah. And when I brought up these questions within the church, I was really shunned for it, pushed away, or people just didn't have an answer for me. And I began to see that fear even within my own parents, because they didn't want to question their belief. That's a cornerstone for them. That's their comfort.
I feel like for me, I've questioned leaving the church early on in my early years of faith. My parents went through a really nasty divorce, so much that it had scarred my mom that she has walked away from religion in general. She has walked away from God and doesn't go to church. I think my brothers have seen that, and they are now grown young adults, and they don't believe in that as well. And there was a low point in my life where I tried to reach out to people, and I just wasn't getting the answers. I wasn't understanding my purpose and my reason in life, where I was second-guessing my existence. Naturally, we are curious beings, and so I was just naturally diving deeper into my word, diving deeper into understanding, why am I going through what I'm going through? And is this something that I blame God, or is this something that is the free will and the sin that is just corrupted in humanity, that I have no control over? But there's still choices that I can make that can overcome the challenges that I'm going through. So that's personally and with the church that I've experienced.
I left the Catholic Church. I left it. And what I didn't leave was a central belief in God. So I was more agnostic than I was Christian, Catholic. And the reason why I left it was because of the rhetoric that I constantly heard. I grew up in a protected bubble. Okay, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I went to Catholic grammar school, Catholic high school. I went to Fordham University, a Jesuit Catholic college, right? But for me, it was more of that question of, how dare you, as a Black person, believe in white Jesus? So for myself, okay, show me what you got. I went through Islam. I even went to the 5%ers, okay? Exactly. The Israelites, okay, gotcha. Buddhism, oh, okay. And I even went to the Black church, because I figured if I'm going to be Christian, I'm Black. Why are you a Catholic? Go to the Black church. So my favorite place to go outside of the Catholic Church is West Angeles, honey. Okay, I'll be in there. That is my spot. But what changed for me? How did I get back to Catholicism? Well, we all believe in communion as Christians. That's something that we hold for ourselves. And when we had communion at West Angeles, this is where we have some divide between all of us, right, as Christians. The presence of Christ in the Eucharist is something that for me was a real thing that I cannot let go, because of what he told us scripturally. So I think for me, my experience, even though I left, I was in apostasy for a while, I have an appreciation for whatever, and a respect for whatever it is that you feel you are called to. So,
do you think this human experience of religion is due to the discomfort of death that humans have?
Yes.
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 Well, but for Christians, Christianity, we are not afraid of death. We look forward to death. I am looking forward to the day I die.
Girl, we scared. We scared.
No, come on now. Let me finish that. My father died. My father died the day before my birthday last year. It was a shock to me. But for me, I know where my father is as a man who believed in God to the day he died. He is with him. In my belief, he is with him. I will see him again. So
I think as an atheist, I'm scared of the concept of death, or the process of dying, because it is such an unknown. I try to spend more of my time thinking about what I'm doing while I'm alive, so that when that time does come, One thing I've always said is that the only life after our deaths are the legacies we create while we're here. That's what lives on, whether it is good or bad. So, but yeah, the concept of death, or like the process, it still scares me.
I'm more curious.
I think that there's a reason for that. I don't think death is supposed to happen to us. As a Christian, all of us humans, we have this visceral reaction to it because that's not how things were supposed to be. If we go back to the garden and all those things, it's the sin nature of humanity,
I have more of a curiosity and excitement for once it happens, because to me, this is hell. Like being a spirit stuck in a body on this planet with all these people being super decisive. I think the only reason they get me to come back down here is like, you can eat food again. You can go to Paris.
In a way that I think that there's a difference between saying like, I appreciate death and the concept of death and what it is, then saying like, I actually want to die. I feel like nobody wants to die.
Right.
But we can still sit here and appreciate.
If you're in pain,
What are your thoughts?
Well, I never really thought about joining another religion because I was born and raised in the church and very strict into the church. You know what I mean? Like I went to church every day. Black church, you're there all day. It wasn't until I joined the military and I had a black friend who was an atheist, and I've never met a black atheist ever in my life. And he planted little seeds, and he was like, Darius, you were born and raised to believe this. This is all you know. You were beaten with this Bible, and they tell you that it's the truth. You know what I'm saying? Even though there's really no evidence of God actually really existing. I started to think about the concept of hell and good and evil, and I started to go through life situations and realize a lot of things aren't black and white at all. And you can devote your life to a God and go to church every Sunday and pray and do everything, and you can find something in heaven. That's a good, comforting thought. But the reality is there's no proof of any of it.
Blaze, I want to put a
reality.
Let him talk.
Me personally, I went to church until I was 14 years old, twice a week, right? So every Sunday and every Wednesday, right? My ass was in the church, right? From very young, from graduating from Sunday school to actually being around the adults and things like that. We probably all gone through that process. Once I started to engage in free thinking, and once I got into my former teenage years around like 16, 17, and I was able to kind of get away from my family and get into being really into the Black Power struggle, right? And I found myself identifying with my community, right? And so when I realized Black Christians that I came across were more obsessed with people being gay in the church, was more obsessed with what the images of Jesus look like, and they had no time, essentially, for the things that I believe will help our community. And so I started to dive into different religions. The first religion I dove into was Islam, right? Because I remember going to Harlem and seeing Black Israelites on the streets, right? And those were the first people who cultivated a sense of Blackness in me, right? And it wasn't embarrassing, but then I realized that there was a lot of toxicity. So then I started to go to Eastern religions and things like that. And eventually I decided to connect my conscious being, right, with my mental being. That's what led me to African spirituality. And it was everything that I personally needed, right, in order for me to continue to engage with everyone like I love them. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like there's a lot of hate. There's a lot of hate on the underside of religion.
So there is a French philosopher, his name is Blaise Pascal, and he has something called Pascal's wager. And I think that you can relate to this regardless of your faith belief. He says that you can make the choice that it's for yourself, that it's better to believe in a God, that there's something, at least that there's something greater than this human condition. Because at the end of the day, what it's going to force us all to do is to look at each other as human beings, to serve mankind with kindness, with charity, with care, right? Helping those in need, and to be rewarded at the end of the day that there is a God. But if there is no God, guess what? You still left a legacy of hope on the planet, whether there was a God or not. And that's how I think
that's the whole "what if you're wrong" thing. It's like an insurance policy for something that still you have. There is that's like an insurance policy for something that you still do not know exists, and that's we hear that from a lot of Christians. The whole
can you explain everything?
Because I'm not trying to explain everything.
You can't explain everything of the world either, but you understand science.
Let's let her talk.
Yes. So so this is that assumes once again, that if you don't believe in God, that you're not good.
That doesn't say that.
Yes,
it's fundamental to our. Sorry to cut you off, but I feel a lot of this, like this belief that says that, like, oh, you're not good if you don't believe in God. Christians believe that they're not good without God either. Like, none of us are good in our own right. So to say that, like, oh, Christians now have a pedestal to stand up and say, like, hey, I'm better than you now. No, you're not. It's God. No, listen, they're wrong.
Christianity is inherently racist.
I look at it from a legal perspective as Christianity, as it was built into law in the United States to classify the enslaved captives that came over, that were brought over, transported over from the continent of Africa, and used to justify the enslavement as well as the mistreatment of darker skinned people, using the curse of Ham that is in the Bible, even though the description of Jesus himself was not white as is depicted in popular culture. But the Christianity as we know it today, and the distinct differences between certain non-Black people and Black folks and other people of color, and the conditions of our community certainly imply that it is racist.
Even within the Old Testament, you're looking at these different groups of people, different tribes going to war with one another, and even, saying that my God wants you to be completely snuffed out. So yeah, it's always been wielded in a way that's been inherently racist.
I think this is an interesting point because I do agree in many ways, not that Christianity is inherently racist, but that it was used in very racist ways to suppress people and oppress people and enslave people. So I absolutely do agree with that. And I think that another narrative, the slavery in the Atlantic slave trade also gets very sticky because you also had African slaves and tribes who were betraying their own people to give them away to these colonizers and more. So, I mean, it's like there's so much murkiness in that entire conversation that it's like one side over the other. Who's the lesser of two evils kind of thing, right? Those who were enslaving plus those who sold their families to the slavery,
Well, there were a number of captives that were kidnapped. So they weren't necessarily given over. Like you said, it does become a very, very murky and very ugly history overall. And so I definitely agree that, but yes, the justification, especially through the Catholic Church in one of the papal bulls, which actually endorsed the transatlantic slave trade. That is historic. That is a fact.
Right.
And so we have to, we cannot ignore that.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good point because even as Christians, regardless of our denominations, we have to look at the ugly parts and stand in it and admit it and that these were wrong and this happened, not try to excuse it.
Right.
So I don't disagree with you on that.
Right.
There's some really ugly things that the Catholic Church certainly did, and I don't deny that. And the only thing that I would disagree on is the fact that listen, I'm going to get it on the internet. I know Jesus was not white, y'all, okay? So you can't tell me my God is a white man. So inherently in what it is, I don't see the racism in the original, but how it's been used, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, if you have a kernel of truth, and I don't know that we'll all even agree with what that kernel of truth is, and someone or something falls away from that truth, does it make the truth ineffective? Or does it make the falling away the most ineffective thing? Does that make sense? In other words, if there is a God, and I believe there is, but if there is a God and someone distorts that understanding or concept of God, does it make the God ineffective, or does it make what they've done in falling away from that kernel of truth?
There's a very simple way that this could be resolved, right? If there is any type of God, right? It could very much be cleared up by them appearing and dispelling all of these discourses, all of these different beliefs, all of these different, it could possibly end the conversation, or it could end all of this discourse right here.
I disagree because we believe that he already did that.
Yeah, it's really common too in the Old Testament.
We already believe that, and they killed him. So it's like
because of that.
Yeah,
and I agree. There's a lot of evidence that shows in that. I mean, you guys were talking about evidence earlier, and there's evidence in the Old Testament how the angel of the Lord had come in, how he had transformed.
Oh, God. I heard there's evidence of this. And then I was like, here we go. And then what did I say, y'all? They justify the Bible with the Bible. Like, come on, Selena. We cannot justify the Bible being real because of the Bible. But this happens so much. What evidence? Y'all, what evidence? What?
I agree. There's a lot of evidence that shows in that. I mean, you guys were talking about evidence earlier, and there's evidence in the Old Testament how the angel of the Lord had come in, how he had transformed Saul's life into Paul. There's a lot of evidence in seeing the bush burning on fire, Moses speaking to Moses, and so there is a lot of in that belief of understanding where Christ has come from and revealed himself through Old Testament.
The Bible is a book that does not have footnotes. It does not have points of reference, which means that it is a book of allegory. It is a book of stories. It is a book of things that cannot necessarily be replicated today. You can't see this. No one can talk through a burning bush today. It
is not a source, okay? You cannot reference the very thing you're talking about and use it as the source too. I cannot say Cat in the Hat was real because in Cat in the Hat, it said that he walked down the street. Come on, man. Like, what are we talking about? I mean, how is this still grounds of a discussion? This still cannot be. This can't be life right now. We cannot just keep using this like it's a point of reference. You cannot. How? Like, come on, we gotta stop this, y'all. At some point, like, I'm just like, come on, bro. Come on, bro. Brother, we can't keep doing this. Like, come on, man. I'm like literally just like, we cannot keep justifying the Bible being real with the Bible. And I get it. This is the only thing Christians have really to say that, oh, these were the miracles that happened. But y'all got to understand, I can't say, oh, Cat in the Hat was real just because in Cat in the Hat, it said Cat in the Hat performed some shit too. Like, you know what I'm saying? It still cannot be your reference point to say that this thing exists. It's a collection of stories. And this is why I say sometimes it gets exhausting, because in every time this same thing happens as we get through this topic. It gets exhausting to tell people that they cannot use that thing to, but I don't know if they have anything else to use. It's like they have to use that, and they take out all other facts that you put in front of them. Like, it's something. Wow, man.
That could be replicated today, then maybe we could see the validity in that.
Well, maybe if you had some DMT, which kind of leads into a lot of my own personal belief system, because I don't actually identify as atheist. I'm probably more agnostic than anything. And in recent years, I've come into a lot of African spirituality by way of Ifa, which a lot of people in West Africa would practice some form of Ifa. It gets, translated through the slave trade as Santeria in Cuba. It's showing up in hoodoo and voodoo throughout,
which the church South deemed as witchcraft.
Exactly. Which it does have elements of that when you get into it, but it's misconstrued, and that lens of Christianity being put on those things has given it a lot of negative connotation when we really did that to have survival and a way to still connect to our culture. And a lot of it still was able to survive through sharing that belief system.
Can I say something real quick? So I'm Liberian. So like my parents, they're from Liberia. They're African. And I grew up with a lot of Nigerians as well from the Igbo tribe, and I see, and I don't know, are you Black American as well? Like, okay, cool. So I see this trend of people coming into African spirituality as if to say that that's something that even people in West Africa believe in. But if you interact with those people, like the African people that are over here now,
they probably
don't. They don't. In fact, they also see it as, a lot of them also see it as witchcraft.
Because they've also been colonized.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, see, that's another thing, right? If we're going to talk about colonization, then we can't take away those Black Africans' freedom to also choose a religion for themselves.
No, they can totally choose for themselves. That's not an issue.
So to say that they're colonized, and that's why they believe what they believe, I feel like you're looking down on their ability to choose and understand right and wrong for themselves.
But it's just
And I kind of find that
that they
offensive.
were
Just a little-
colonized, specifically Nigeria, because the majority of what I know about myself, my people did come from Nigeria. That was colonized by the British.
So see how you have the ability to look at your beliefs, and even if colonization had some type of oppressive thing on you, you still have the ability to choose whether or not that you believe in that. So do the Africans that are over there. They have the ability to look at their colonization, figure out what parts of their culture are disconnected from their religion, and they can still celebrate it. I want to go a little bit into my personal story because I know I'm going to rant a little bit, but I grew up in a African Liberian Pentecostal church in Minnesota. And over there, there's so much culture. Like not even a drip of it. Did I even understand that there was like whiteness like involved? You know, we have the same food. We sing our Christian songs in a different way than like white churches do. Even sometimes when I went to different white churches, I would be confused as to why they're not singing it the way that we're singing it. And so to say that like Christianity is this thing that deletes culture at its roots, I completely disagree with that because that's where I grew up in.
Do Black atheists have a response to that?
Well, there are different, I mean, that's similar to how the Black church is here in the United States, right? The Catholic Church probably does not do as much singing as like maybe a Baptist.
We got gospel masses out here in LA.
But that's interesting to know. But there are definitely some cultural differences in the way Black folks practice, and part of that is due to the racism because Black folks weren't allowed in certain white churches. What we don't understand about like white supremacy and colonization, that at times it's mental.
Yeah.
It can be mental. So even if it isn't overtly someone physically oppressing you, when we talk about the institutional practices, it means that it is ingrained into your mentality that it doesn't matter who it is. Even in your Pentecostal practice, if you are still worshiping Jesus, 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 and there are a lot of evangelical, like even on the continent now, where they are still putting white Jesus. I think in Ghana, there is a huge statue of white Jesus. So even if it is a predominantly Black practice, it is still sort of rooted in a Eurocentric and white mentality, and we have to think about that.
I think that's a response.
So I was going to ask, like, what carryovers, and I'm actually very curious about this, what carryovers do you see from white colonization that you see in African practices today, other than white Jesus? Because we can look at white Jesus and be like, I can even agree that we should probably put up less white Jesuses up in churches, up in Black churches, up in African churches. But separate from that, what do you think is being deleted from our culture and our cultural expression of Christianity by adopting that into our belief system?
So it's the way we treat women.
Exactly.
The way
that's a
treat
huge
children.
one.
Yeah.
It is the way that inherently we still don't stick together as well as we should.
We don't move.
You know,
We got
these
no
are
motion.
things that are holdovers from colonization, from enslavement that has been used to divide and conquer us. The way we still other each other in a lot of ways. The one thing that we hear as atheists is that we're trying to be white. We hear that, well, you're rejecting your Blackness as an atheist, which is the furthest thing from the truth. It is my Blackness that defines my atheism. You know, it is because I care about Black folks and the Black community. And even in our diversity, that makes that has defined or that has determined my conclusion.
I'll just say,
y'all, I fucking love this. Okay, it's 3 minutes left, and I just don't want it to end. Like, I would really love a part 2. Like, this has been such a good discussion. Like, I'm kind of taken back by some of the responses. I'm kind of just listening and taking in and, you know, engaging. But it's so interesting, I swear, to hear other people's point of view and how they think, like how that people's brain ticks when and where they want to speak on. Is so interesting to me. Like, when do you choose to speak up and say your point? Your interjection is like, this is what triggered you in a sense of maybe from personal upbringing or where you are right now or your development, your journey, but whatever, this is just something that triggered you to say something. And it's like, sometimes I hear emotional responses. Sometimes I hear the cognitive dissonance. in the conversations. I hear the facts. You hear the rebuttals. The conversation, it's like, it's going over good. But God, I wish there was sometimes we could take out some of the emotion. Like, I love the emotion, because this is where people have to present certain things. But at the same time, it's like, this is kind of the same spot where we fall to, is the emotion, and we can't see discussions. We gotta end discussions. We gotta move on. And sometimes I'm just like, oh man, I just wish this could go on and go on and go on and go on and go on until it gets to where it needs to get to. I feel like we need to get to this point of where we need to get to. I want to keep talking about it for 15 hours, if that's what it takes sometimes, to say, let's keep talking about it. I really am, and I'm ready for the movement. I guess that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm just ready for Black people to get on one accord. We need to talk longer. We need to think together longer. We need to have these conversations, even emotional or not. We need to get through them and keep talking. We need to keep talking. Sort it out. You get emotional, sort it out. Get it back together. Let's talk. Let's keep talking. I feel like it needs to get to the point of where we understand each other. Why do you think this? Why do I think this? I don't want to say that it's not that we need to think alike. Because you got to respect people's different opposing opinions. But at the same time, that is our very downfall as well. Sometimes I feel like we need to move in one accord and think in one accord in certain instances, because this is how we will move in one motion. And because we have so many opposing opinions and emotions, this is the very reason why everybody's entitled to something. Sometimes it gets annoying because everybody's entitled to some opinion, and it can be the farthest thing from the truth, but you're entitled to it. I've learned this, and I'm just like, but in the same sense, you got to say, well, if they want to think 1 + 1 is fucking 3, you got to let them. And it's just like, what? This is why, if everybody in the world thought 1 + 1 is 3, and you got a few that think it's 2, in some point in time, we got to get on one accord. You know what I'm saying? It can be a problem to have most people thinking that 1 + 1 is 3. We do so much appeasing people by saying, oh, well, an opinion is opinion. And I'm like, there's wrong and there's right. And people always want to find that gray area. Well, I'm entitled to think that I'm entitled. Like, shut the fuck up. Sometimes we need to get there. Such a good discussion. This is such a good discussion, man.
Say that, like, sometimes we conflate, like, general human nature. And I don't mean to disregard everything that you're saying, because I still think tribalism exists outside of Christianity. I still think misogyny exists outside of Christianity. I think racism exists outside of Christianity and all of these other things. So a lot of the times what you're seeing is general human nature coming atop a belief system that preaches love, and it dilutes it, because that's who we are as humans. We're going to take something that's meant for love, and we're going to take something that's meant for unity, not uniformity, and we're going to use that to destroy, like, our relationships with other people. But the reason why I call myself a Christian is because I can look at a standard that's much higher than myself to say, hey, even though I have a lot of these differences with other people, we're all the same under God.
Let's move on to closing statements.
For me, remain curious. Ask questions. Do your own research. We should be creating things that we want to see out in the world, ways that we want to replicate goodness, love, charity, taking care of one another. So ultimately, that's what's most important. And why we always got to make God a he, like.
I love the conversation. I love the individuality. I love the commitment to it. I don't have a heaven or hell to put anyone in. I have a personal relationship, and I throw it out and I share it, and hopefully it makes a difference for the other person. And if it doesn't, he's given them the right to not choose it. As we discover who we are as Black people, as we discover who we are as people, as we probe into the divine, whether or not it's the universe, whether or not it's some other form of spirituality, that being open to the revelation that I am bigger, I am better, and eternal life is mine, whether or not that is the reincarnation or whether or not that is in living with him eternally. So
I think that everyone here has beautiful backgrounds, and they all gave beautiful stories, and my final thought is just that when it does come to Black Christians with the historical value of the Black church, I do believe that it is inherent for Black Christians to dedicate a portion of themselves to the Black Power struggle and the Black movement. And that is my final goal.
My brother, thank you.
I absolutely love Black people, man. It's like Black people are the fucking best. I love Black people. I feel like, man, that was a lot. Like I was saying, that's a lot to unpack, y'all. That's a lot. I know y'all might want to write some comments down, and I will definitely reach back to whoever wants to write a comment, because that was a lot. So I know there's going to be some people that want to, chop it up. We can do that. I ask that you, be respectful in the comments to your beliefs, and whoever else drops something in the comments. Let me know if y'all like that video. We can get into some more. If you want to drop some reaction requests in the comments of different topics, we can get into that too. I know I'm going to keep finding my own that I resonate with or don't resonate with, whatever. But y'all keep tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my reactions as well. Let me know what you guys thought about this. I'm going to see you in the next video.